Busy?
Good morning.
Good morning. Busy?
The efficient man is never busy.
Oh, I thought as you'd had a few days off in Paris, your paperwork might have mounted up.
But refreshed by my 2 days off, I caught up on it. Well, very nearly.
And don't let me interrupt you. You seen my daughter this morning?
Not to notice.
I thought if you'd seen her, she might have mentioned the car she hired to go on her few days' holiday.
I am not in the habit of discussing with all and sundry about their traveling arrangements.
No. Especially as in this case, it was rather outside your personal interest as you travelled by air.
I'm not in the habit of swimming the channel, certainly not in winter.
It was the mileometer. The mileometer on the car she hired was defective.
Hardly an incapacitating defect.
No, neither here nor there, really. Especially as here to there and there to here, in actual fact, amounted to only 8 miles. An extravagant daughter I've got, haven't I? Hiring a car for 2 days to travel 8 miles. The distance from here, the motel, to the airport and back. Are you interested in photography?
Not particularly.
I wonder what you'll think of these. Mr. Paul Ross and companion boarding the flight to Paris from Birmingham Airport. To recognize the companion. Mr. Paul Ross and companion enjoying a champagne supper, the deluxe flight, of course. Mr. Paul Ross and companion arriving at the airport in Paris. Mr. Paul Ross and companion signing in for a double room at a charming French hotel. Mr. Paul Ross and companion enjoying lunch at an exclusive Parisian restaurant. Ditto, going to the opera. Oh, so sophisticated, Mr. Paul Ross, considering his companion is practically tone deaf. But then perhaps she was more anxious to please him than he was to please her.
Very well. Your daughter and I spent a couple of days together in Paris.
And Mummy found out.
You once falsely accused me of sexually assaulting you. Be certain that your daughter would not describe our mutual experiences in Paris in that particular manner. I am not quite sure whether you're being overprotective about her or simply jealous about me. If the first, you must understand that your daughter is 25 years old and is quite grown up. If the second, I have only one advice to give you. Grow up yourself.
Well, well. Coffee in here, please. Oh, make it for 2, would you? Thank you. David Hunter sours my breakfast by sending in a message asking when I can meet him. I send one back saying noon. Here I am. Do you see him?
Darling, before he arrives, let's have a little conference of our own, shall we? How long do you intend that we stay at Crossroads?
Why do you ask?
Well, because we're in England to wind up your major business here, and the logical place would seem to me to be at the office in London. So why waste time squabbling over a grotty little garage?
Again I ask, why do you ask?
I'm bored. I miss the bright lights.
Oh, I like my daughter's company here, don't you?
Well, surely we could persuade her to come to London with us.
Oh, darling, surely you know your own daughter. She suddenly takes 2 days off work out of turn and hires a car. That means she's up to one of her favourite sports, breaking some poor young fellow's heart. As she hired the car and he didn't, it's another Alistair. All polish and no brass. Harmless unless we try to take her away from him. Yes, a willful daughter, our Miranda. The more we pull, the more she'll cling.
Well, she's going to be worse than Mum ever was, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Going on and on, how we should have saved more money. Get yourself a house before you have a baby, all the same old arguments.
Yeah, I know.
At least you didn't have the cheek to ask how we're going to pay for it.
I wish I knew the answer to that myself.
Oh, no. Here we go again.
You can't blame me for worrying. We're mortgaging our whole future on 100 to 1 chance.
Other people have managed.
Yeah, well, maybe they had help. I mean, real help, not just borrowing and paying back. This was a breakthrough when it started. People were prepared to invest in the programme. But now the novelty's wearing off.
Well, there's the health service.
Oh, no, don't. Look, the doctor warned us. Just look at the cutbacks. They're even talking about stopping heart transplants because they need the money elsewhere.
I'm going to have to fight you all the way, aren't I?
No.
But you promised. You led me to think that things were going to be all right between us. But now as soon as somebody tries to put me off the idea, all the doubts are back, all the moans about money.
That's not fair. I am on your side. Just that I'm scared. Can't you see that? For you, for us, people taking over our lives.
You mean the baby taking over our lives?
Yeah, all right. Perhaps that's what I do mean. I love you, Glenn. And all you seem to care about is having this kid.
Well, as we're all here, David, why don't we ask J. Henry about the garage?
I have no intention of chasing round and round that particular mulberry bush.
Then there was no point in keeping this appointment.
However, I have another subject in mind, a source of considerable dissatisfaction to me. Paul Ross.
Oh, we're none of us particularly fond of him. But the fact remains he does his work very well, and while that fact remains, so should he.
I can count on that.
Why?
You just said why.
The general consternation, J. Henry, is based on the impression that you and David at last are seeing eye to eye on something.
Ah, yes. Well, now, consider this. Due to a misunderstanding, Ross thought I was trying to get him kicked out of the motel, so he went to Paris to see if a hotelier, a renowned hotelier, Gaston Perouse, no less, would give him an executive job. Perouse made him a very handsome offer instantly. Well, if a hotelier of that quality appreciates Ross, I don't see why we shouldn't.
Yes, but what I don't see is why Paul Ross didn't accept a job of a hotelier of that quality.
His personal contract to me made it impossible for him to accept without my consent.
Darling, I think it would be very unwise for you to keep the man as your personal prisoner. He'd only resent it, and his work would suffer. Now, quite apart from your personal contract with him, David, would you be prepared to release him from his contract with the motel?
One contract stymies the other, doesn't it? But I'll say this. I'd never combine with you to become a jailer to a dissatisfied employee. If Ross asks for his release, I'd say it's all right with me.
Well, that's perfectly in order, as long as it's understood that it would not be all right with me. I say the man stays.
It's nearly ready. Just waiting for the chops. They're taking a bit of time.
Was Dad jealous of us?
What?
Ron and me, when we were born.
Oh, what do you mean, jealous?
Did he think that we were spoiling things for you, taking over your lives?
Of course not. Well, no more than most fathers do.
Oh, I see. It's a common feeling, is it? All men resent their children.
What's she talking about, Kevin?
All I said was
Never
that...
mind what he said. What he meant was he doesn't want us to have a baby.
Oh, for God's sake.
I don't believe that for a minute.
No, of course not, because you're a reasonable, normal woman.
Meaning I'm not, I suppose.
Well, if you acted like one once in a while...
Oh, sorry. Don't mind me.
You can't even have a private conversation in this house.
Well, it's just as well if what I've been listening to is an example. I've never heard such rubbish. Of course Kevin wants children. Mind you, they're not an unmixed blessing, you know. They can come between a man and his wife. Especially if she makes it plain that's all she's married him for.
Mum.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Now, you and Kevin, you make it up, do you hear? Whatever it was that started it, just forget it. Let's have things like they used to be, eh? Right. Better go and see about the lunch, hadn't I? Otherwise you're going to be late back.
None of this would have happened if it wasn't for my mother. I'll have to go round there and have a straight talk. She's got to be made to realise that we've got our own lives to lead. Any decisions we make are none of her damn business.
What was all that happening then before dinner?
What do you mean?
Oh, something was happening, wasn't it?
Oh, it was just family business. Nothing to do with you.
Oh, no, I know that, but I mean to say, you know, you haven't got Arthur now to talk things over with, have you?
You don't have to remind me.
No, but I'm saying, you know, if ever you want to ask for my advice...
Well, I don't.
I'm always here.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking how to take a little job, you know, part-time, to help pay for my keep. I don't see why I shouldn't pull my weight while I'm here. You know, and I might be able to put a bit by. You know, nest egg to start afresh later on.
How much do you think you're going to make by this part-time job, then?
Oh, I don't know. You'd be surprised. I had a lovely job in Morecambe once, you know. A little gold mine. Deck chair attendant. Aye. I made a lot of money in tips. Never mind the wage.
Yes, well, there's not much call for deck chairs in King's Oak, you know, especially in the middle of winter.
Well, I can turn my hand to anything, Kath. You don't believe me, do you?
Yes, I believe you, Wally, but I wish you'd turn your mind to something a bit more permanent, like getting yourself a home.
Well, you know, I've got to look on this as my home. Of course, I know it won't last forever, but, you know, I've been happier here than I have for years, and I'll not forget the things you've done for me. You going to work this afternoon?
No, I've got the day off.
Right. Get your things on. I'm taking you to pictures.
What?
There's a double bill over at Heathbury. John Wayne's in one.
Oh, don't care much for cowboy films.
And Betty Davis in the other.
Betty Davis? Ah, now you're talking.
Well, come on. We'll miss the start.
Oh, I think I better change it, and I can't go like this.
No. Just put a coat on. Who's going to stop galloping horses to have a look at you?
Oh, it's ages since I've been to the cinema in the afternoon. Here, wait a minute. Who's paying?
Hello.
Well, I now know where you spent your few days' holiday, Miranda. And I know that Paul Ross took you there.
That isn't true.
Don't lie to me, Miranda.
I'm not lying. Paul Ross didn't take me to Paris. Paul Ross didn't even invite me. The first he knew about it was when I ambushed him at the airport. He didn't even know that I'd changed his booking from a single to a double room. So if you want to tackle anyone about my fling in Paris, not that you've the slightest right, then don't tackle him but me.
Except that he fell in with your... what shall I call it?
Pursuit of him?
Pursuit. But the deception was all yours. The deception of me, I mean.
I told you before I left not to question me about my trip, or in plain terms, my affair. I don't question you about yours, do I? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. How did you know that Paul and I went to Paris? You didn't have us followed, did you? Next, you'll be saying that you had us photographed as well. Mother, that was obscene.
Yes, wasn't it?
And what did you expect to find out? That I intended the ultimate sin to marry him?
Don't you?
Of course not. We weren't exactly wide-eyed innocents in Paris, you know.
Not the marrying kind, then?
Most certainly not. We're just going to live together for a couple of years, that's all. Paul's looking for a flat for us right now. Either Paris, if Father releases him, or right here, if Father won't.
What does it take, eh? Just what I have to do to keep you from butting in.
I was merely trying to point out the difficulties.
Our minds are made up.
Both of you? Or just her? Are you so desperate to have this child? Well, are you? Is it the be-all and end-all?
She needs it.
But what about you? You've never said anything about wanting a family.
I know that, but...
So why give in?
It's not a question of giving in.
Why should she have it all her own way?
You've no idea how much it means to her, have you?
I have some idea of how much she says it means.
All talk. Is that what you're trying to say? Well, you're way out. Way out. It nearly broke up our marriage. That's how much it means. She left me. She was talking about a divorce.
Was she now? Then it would seem that this child is more important to her than her husband.
Oh, listen.
Or her marriage, and I find that very disturbing.
Will you stop trying to twist things?
Twisting? You can tell me something as important as that and accuse me of twisting? Kevin, if she leaves you and threatens you and uses every ploy to get her own way, don't you in your heart of hearts think it deserves much more thought? Oh, I'd no idea there was such a rift. Oh, my poor darling. If she can have such a complete disregard for your feelings, I cannot for the life of me understand why you should consider hers.
That's because the important things never got through to you. I love her. It's as simple as that.
Ah, here you are.
And here I've been for the past hour.
I've been looking for you.
So I deduced.
I want to show off to you.
Darling, this is becoming a habit.
I'm about to carve another pound of flesh from poor Ross.
Oh, if there's going to be blood, I'm not going to stay to watch.
Oh, it's all right. I'm not having him in. Oh, sit down. He shall be carved in his absence. Sit down, please. You're going to enjoy this. Come in.
You sent for me, Mr. Pollard.
Sent is too peremptory a word to use for one so efficient, not to mention charming, in her work. No, my dear. I invited you for a consultation. Now, do please sit down. Come on, do sit down. Now, what can I offer you? A ladylike little sherry?
Well, Mr. Paul doesn't really like one to breathe alcoholic fumes all over the restaurant guests.
Mr. Paul, if you're wise this evening, is not going to be able to impose his prohibitions upon you any longer. You know, of course, that I have a shareholding in the motel. Yes? No?
Yes.
And you learnt that from your flatmate, no doubt, the knowledgeable Miss Metcalfe. Yes? No?
I suppose so.
There you are, my dear. That's what I meant when we discussed this. Diane has discretion. Knowing that Miss Metcalfe and I don't get along, she chooses an answer that falls right in the middle of neither one thing nor the other. You know, I always discuss everything in advance with my wife. And she agrees that my interest in the motel should extend to a ruthless exploitation of its staff. And I warn you fairly, that's what I intend to do with you. Exploit you. Your efficiency, your charm, and your discretion. The three things that are vital to expert management. And the three things which Mr. Paul Ross, if you'll allow me to say what you think about him yourself, so conspicuously lacks. So, drink up, Diane, to your new job.
Darling, you have completely neglected to mention what that new job is.